Morning, everyone. So, welcome to the second day of the DHIS2 Analytics Source Academy 2020 for Asia region. I see that we only have around 25 participants joining right now, so around 50%. And we are expecting that others will be joining. So, we'll give others around 5 more minutes to join. But before that, I have a small announcement. We have gone through the feedback of yesterday's session. So I do advise you, please, because we can see that only few, not all of you have submitted the feedback. So we will give you 5 more minutes to complete the feedback for day one. And also for the day two, you know how to mark your attendance. So others who have already submitted the feedback for day one, please proceed marking your attendance for the day two. It's there in the Moodle. Right? And we will resume the formal session in 5 minutes. Anyway, let's start the session for today. So we were going through the feedback that you have submitted yesterday, and there were a few areas that some of you have mentioned that where we could improve. So first thing is about recordings of these sessions being made available. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the slide, in our support channel, we had some issues yesterday, some technical issues related to Zoom. So actually not from our end, because the recordings were not made available instantly after the sessions. So I think it is now sorted and you can access the Zoom recordings for yesterday. And also there were a few comments requesting for us to share the material, the lecture material that we'll be conducting for the following day, for the next day, made available the day before. So I guess we have already done that. So by yesterday night, we made the sessions, the material available for today's session. And we will keep it like that for the next remaining days as well. All right. So those are the announcements that we have, and please make sure that, those of you who joined a bit later, please make sure that you mark your attendance for the day two, because attendance is counted seriously, and if you do not get 80% attendance, you will not be eligible to sit for the final exam, and also you will be provided 10% of the final grading for the for your punctuality. Basically, your attendance will be counted. All right, so let's start with today's session. So today, of course, what we are expecting to do. So let's, just briefly mention about what we did yesterday. Now, we have explained to you what this Analytic Tools Academy is about. So we will be explaining to you about few DHIS2 core tools, mainly 4 of them. And there are 2 other supplementary tools that we can use to analyze data in the DHIS2 platform. So we are going to cover these 6 tools within the course of these 2 weeks. And of course, the next thing is that we will also be discussing, there are a few sessions where we discuss about general public health concepts and how the public health issues related to, mainly related to information collection, data collection in public health domain could be addressed by using DHIS2 platform. So these also will be discussed in few of the days, in addition to the analytic tools that we are having. All right, so yesterday I did a presentation highlighting the new features in analytics, which is available in the DHIS2 latest version, which is version 2.34, right? So towards the latter part of the day, what I did was a comprehensive demonstration of the analytic tools which are available in the DHIS2, right? And how to use them using a live scenario. So we took the example of HIV program officer who's at national level, and how he can log into his DHIS2 instance and perform a desk review based on the data that is available using the DHIS2 analytics tools. So the objective is you should be able to perform or replicate the same in your DHIS2 instances towards the end of this training program. So I requested you not to, follow me while I'm doing it, because it's just for the demonstration purpose for you to understand how, what is available within DHIS2. So what we are going to do starting from today is to train them on how to use these tools which are already there. But before moving on to the actual tools, today, the day 2 is dedicated for something very special. This is the fundamentals. So this is why we have requested all of you to complete the Fundamentals Academy in DHIS2, because there are few flavors of academies that we have. One of them is Design and Customization as a level 1 academy. So this level 1 Design and Customization Academy mainly focuses on how to configure the DHIS2 metadata, right? So this will not be explicitly covered in the DHIS2 analytics tools, but the thing is we cannot perform analysis using DHIS2 if you do not have a proper idea about the configuration of metadata in DHIS2. So that is why we have dedicated the day 2 just to catch up with and to summarize what this metadata that is available in DHIS2, how it is configured, and how it becomes important when we are doing analysis in the DHIS2 platform. So today's session is entirely dedicated to review this metadata configuration in DHIS2. All right, so let's move on to the presentation. Let me share my screen. All right. And before moving on to the presentation, at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask from our facilitators in the support channel in your Slack. So in case if you have forgotten to open up your Slack desktop application or the web browser, please open it up, because sometimes it will be difficult for us to respond to all your queries in Zoom chat. So we request all of you to use the Slack for all types of troubleshooting. Right. Okay, so the first session for today is about DHIS2 metadata and sharing, right? So here what we will be discussing is to provide an overview of DHIS2. So what we will do is we will discuss initially about the building blocks which are there in the DHIS2. And then we will talk about the DHIS2 data elements and categories. And then we will discuss about organization units and organization unit groups and group sets, indicators, legends, and finally about metadata sharing. So this is the scope of the content that we'll be covering in this presentation. And this presentation, the initial half will be conducted by me, and then the latter part related to organization units, indicators, legends, and metadata sharing will be done by Priyanka. All right. Okay, so let's proceed. Now, DHIS2, as far as you are aware, is not just a software for data collection. So let us look at why we say it is not just a software for data collection. Now, for example, even we can ask from few of the participants of their country experience, if time permits. But what I want to highlight is, let's imagine a particular country's context. In all of your countries, inside the Ministry of Health, we have different departments. So, for example, we may have a department within the Ministry of Health who is conducting and who is dealing with all types of information related to EPI. And we may have another department for maternal and child health, and for NCD, HIV. So this is how usually in ministries of health context, departments are arranged. So this may be what you are seeing here is a kind of a generic diagram, but it may be similar in most of your country's context. So let us try to just briefly get an overview of this arrangement in one of the countries of the participants. So could anyone volunteer from any of the countries to briefly explain how inside your Ministry of Health context these departments are organized? I mean, are all of them there? I mean, how they are functioning? Are these, I mean, functioning as individual or vertical programs with kind of staffing, which is arranged all the way from national to field level, and how it is like? So, I mean, what I'm expecting is maybe a 2 to 3 minute just brief introduction about arrangement of different departments within the Ministry of Health in your country. So, any volunteers? Do we have any volunteers who would like to provide this information to me? Any of the countries, it does not matter. So what I request is to briefly explain arrangement of different departments inside your within your Ministry of Health. Any volunteers?
Maybe I can step in. Mahmoud, good morning.
Yes, please. Yeah, good morning. Please
So in our country, EPI, maternal health, nutrition are in one department, under one department,
Okay.
and the other diseases are under one department. Like they will be also categorized as infectious disease and non-communicable disease. Communicable disease and non-communicable, like HIV, malaria, and TB are under communicable disease.
Okay.
And NTDs, and then non-communicable disease as one sub-department under the prevention and control of diseases.
All right. Great.
And the rehabilitation is not as such available in our country.
Mm-hmm.
This is how it's organized in Ethiopia.
Yeah, just let me ask one more question from you. So, I assume all these departments are collecting their own information. So, do these different departments have their own information system, or do you have a HMIS or National Level Health Management Information System, which is obtaining all the information from all these departments?
We have one HMIS, as you said.
Yes. So that is, I mean, everyone talks. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to comment? I think we have so many participants, around 50% of the participants are from Sri Lanka. So, because I mean, I just want one person from Sri Lanka also to comment, because I want to highlight to all other participants, because now Derek mentioned the classic scenario, which is there in most of the countries, where you have this infectious control department, and then maybe the MCH prevention, and then the vertical program stay separate. And usually you have a national level HMIS where people, I mean, everyone has access. But in Sri Lanka, it's slightly different. Anybody from Sri Lanka who would like to explain this organization of different departments within the Ministry of Health? Don't feel shy. I think you must be having trouble deciding who will be presenting. I mean, it could be anyone, right? That happens when you have too many people from one country. Come on. Okay, so someone from Health Information Unit of Ministry, maybe? Yeah, Priyanka, who is there from Health Information Unit? Is anybody there? Yeah. Oh yes, we have Jayatri, Ruan. Who else? Jayatri, would you like to give it a try? Where is Ruan? Or anyone? Okay. Guess both of them are not willing to share experience. So anybody from Sri Lanka, or else I will have to represent Sri Lanka and explain. Ashan is there. Okay, Ashan wants to give it a try. Taking too long for someone to reply. All right. Yeah. Who was trying to? Was it? Okay. It doesn't matter. So let me just mention the context in Sri Lanka. So what happens in Sri Lanka is that yes, as it was mentioned in the previous country's context, we have all these departments within the Ministry of Health hierarchy. But the thing is, when it comes to information collection, these departments are having their own information system. So it's like, I mean, now say for example, maternal and child health. If we have a directorate, we call it for maternal and child health. They are functioning at national level with their staff distributed all across the country. And that department, they have their own information system, which is used by their staff all the way up to the field level. And sometimes the other departments, say for example, we have the NCD unit. NCD unit has their own information system, which is used by their own staff. And when that happens, the issue is if you want to get this national level data as a HMIS, there should be some kind of integration between these information systems which are scattered all across, pulling information to the central level HMIS. So this is the context that becomes very important when you are describing the situation of DHIS2. All right. So what I want to highlight is, let's take the example of Derek, where he mentioned that in his country, we have a national level HMIS, which is the information system, health management information system, which is accessed by all the departments within the Ministry of Health. So what happens is when you have the DHIS2 like that, uh, I assume that your HMIS is based on DHIS2. That assumption I did. I assume it's DHIS2. Is that
Yes,
so?
it is. It is.
All right, great. So if that is the DHIS2 is the system which is used, then what actually happens is the DHIS2 or the HMIS should be able to incorporate all the data items that the country requires across all these departments within the system. So that happens. So, I mean, you must be familiar. We have these data elements, indicators, and metadata like that. So all this metadata is configured in this HMIS, which is the DHIS2, right? And then the problem comes when when you need to kind of segregate the visualization and data entry part across MCH and API, NCD, etc. So what I mean to simplify what I mentioned, the thing is when you have a national level HMIS, a single information system, you may want to restrict the visibility and access to some data only to a particular set of people, like say for example the MCH data entry and maybe analysis. You may need to separate it out. Only the MCH staff will be able to access that data. So the DHIS2 is configured and set up in such a way, there is a concept called sharing settings using which you can achieve this. So the advantage is that you have this central system, but still, even though everyone access that system, you can segregate you can restrict the access so that people will only see the data which is relevant to them. So that's one major advantage of using DHIS2 in this integrated setup as a platform. All right. Right. And the other thing, now DHIS2 compared to many other information systems that you may have seen, it has this flexible metadata structure which is customizable using the interfaces. So why I say it is a very important feature is that there are some systems where, this metadata configuration is not that open and it is just at software code level. And whenever you want to change some metadata, you need to get expertise of a programmer or software developer, right? And then this becomes this becomes a major issue when it comes to sustainability, because like in most of the low and middle income countries, you get some initial grant maybe to set up the system, and thereafter when you want to do subsequent updates, right, it becomes challenging because due to lack of funding and lack of planning, things like that. So this is where if you have a system or maybe a platform where it supports configuration of metadata. Say, for example, a new data element is added in future. If you have some national level users who can log in using the front end of that software and edit, that becomes really helpful. So DHIS2 is such a platform. So DHIS2 has these interfaces where you can manage the metadata without need of a software developer. All right. And let me also highlight you another factor. So that is why I took the example of Sri Lanka. So far we discussed about a situation where we have a national level HMIS, one system which is accessed by all these users. But if we have the situation of Sri Lanka, for example, where all these departments within the Ministry of Health have their own information systems. So for example, I'm just taking a random example, right? Supposing the HIV department in the Ministry of Health is having an information system, which is of course implemented from national level to the field level, but that information system is not based on DHIS2, right? Maybe maternal and child health may have a system which is based on DHIS2. Nutrition may have a system which is based on DHIS2, right? And the thing is, like now we may not be in a position even at national level so that we can. I mean, we won't be able to force this particular department. Okay, now look here, we are thinking of moving into DHIS2. So we want all of you, all the directorates to start using DHIS2. So then the issue of legacy data and other administrative problems may come because they have already committed to using a particular system which has been operational for quite some time, and sometimes that may be definitely serving the purpose, and they may not want to actually shift to DHIS2. But the fascinating thing about DHIS2 is because it acts as a data warehouse, and it acts as a central data repository, and it also acts as a platform. So what I mean by being a platform is, supposing these institutes are having a custom-made information system, which may be based on maybe a programming language like PHP, something like that, right? But then the DHIS2 is having this advanced functionalities like Web API, using which you can make an integration component so that from this system, the aggregate data could be pushed to the HMIs. Because, for example, at national level, we may not be too interested in seeing the individual patient level data, right? We just need aggregated statistics. And this is possible due to this the integration capabilities which are there in DHIS2. So DHIS2 is configured in such a way that there is a flexible data model. So even though we have a well-established HMIS to start with, and we maybe 1 or 2 years later decide to integrate maybe with the HIV program, we can easily customize the metadata in an existing DHIS2 system. So that's the fascinating thing about the DHIS2 and its metadata architecture. I hope this is clear. Everything is clear up to this point. Any questions if you have? I would like to take any questions even with audio at this moment about this flexible data model, because this is something very important. Right? Because there are no questions. So let us proceed to DHIS2 building blocks. So this is this is a key concept which has been highlighted over and over again in DHIS2 Fundamentals Academy. So can anyone tell me, how many building blocks are there in DHIS2 and what are those? You can unmute and answer. Is that question too easy that I'm not getting any answers? How many building blocks are there?
3.
All right, there's one answer called 3. Are there any other answers?
Four.
Right.
3 building blocks. what, when, and where.
Okay, we have a couple of answers. Now we have 3 and 4 as answers, and there's one answer. There are 3 building blocks, which are what, when, and where. Right. Yes, please.
Yeah, we could say that majority is 3 building block and plus 1, we could say, because of for the data capture. So it's either, I mainly is the data element or units and period for the analysis, and another one for the data capture.
All right. Okay. Very good. I like all the answers because I mean because so many of you answered. I think it must be clear for everyone because that answer was building up gradually, right? So we had first answer came as 3, and then one of you explained what are the 3 that you are thinking of, which is what, when, and where. And then there was also an answer called there are 4 building blocks, and then also one of you mentioned it's actually 4. How 4 is constituted is 3 plus 1. And then you mentioned that there are major 3 building blocks, plus there is another one which identifies where was the capture, something like that, right? Okay, very nice. I like that interaction. Okay, right. So I would say there are 3 main data elements, 3 main building blocks, which are of course what, when, and where. And we also have this who dimension, right? Who is also a building block which is there, but primarily I mean, at any given scenario, when you're capturing or analyzing data in DHIS2, we always think about what, when, and where. So what I mean by what, when, and where is what is the data item. So let's imagine that we are concerned about capturing data. So what we think about is what is the data item that we capture, and this capture data item that we are going to capture is for where, for which facility, for which district, and then this data item captured for this district is for which period. Is it for year 2019 or 2020, right? So with these 3, we are able to in fact generate quite a complete scenario for data capture. But then again, even in aggregate data collection. So let me just emphasize this. This is something very basic in DHIS2. In DHIS2, we have 2 main verticals of data collection and analysis. One is aggregate data collection. The other one is individual level data collection. So as I mentioned to you yesterday, for the scope of this academy, we will be only dealing with aggregate data. We are not going into individual data, right? So even in the scope of aggregate data, we have also this additional dimension, which is who, which sometimes we capture. For example, when we want to really emphasize. So I will just mention you an example. So let's imagine at the facility level. So you have the health facilities. Inside health facilities, we are capturing data, right? But in some of the countries, you may notice that we may have several donor organizations which are operating, within the entire country. And when you are capturing data at facility, you may be interested to capture data for a situation like, okay, a number of vaccines delivered in the health facility A for the January 2020 by, say, UNICEF, right? Likewise. So for example, we may be interested to know by which donor organization unit this activity was conducted. So likewise, we sometimes even capture this aggregate data based on who dimension, right? So that's why we always mention nowadays that DHIS2 has 3 plus 1 building blocks, which is what, when, and where, which are the standard ones. And then additionally, we have who as a building block. I hope that clears everything about building blocks. So let us now move on to actual scenario of data capturing and see how these are placed. All right. So first of all, where are we now? Just by looking at this DHIS2 interface, what is this module, or what is the application that is opened here? The screenshot is coming from which part of the
data entry app.
Exactly. So this is a data entry application. Okay. So when you are in the data entry application and if someone asks you to explain what you are seeing here, you can always start with what you are seeing in left, right? So can you see what you are seeing here? So can someone explain like something about, okay, now here, my objective is to understand the 3 dimensions, okay? Can someone just briefly explain about one of the dimensions? Then I can also, ask few questions and I mean, these are easy stuff and then we can expand it further. So who would like to explain about the where dimension here? What is the where dimension which is captured? Anybody?
Where is the organization unit? We are capturing the data.
Yes. So yeah, it's Ashan, right? So Ashan, yeah, where is the organization unit which is capturing data? So in this diagram, in this screenshot, what is the organization unit you are capturing data? What's the name of the organization unit?
It is Cardinal Hospital Gateway. Primary
Cardinal
healthcare.
Hospital Gateway. Yeah, all right, okay. So I assume that you have some idea about different levels of organization hierarchy. So in this particular scenario, how many levels are there as you can see?
There are the training and the country, the animal is second level, and then the district, the third level. There are 4 hierarchies.
Exactly. So hope all of you can see. We can see four levels in hierarchy. We have the country level training land. Then animal region is at level 2. Then we have the bird district, and then we have the 4th one, which is the health facility. All right. So out of curiosity, now where would you actually like to capture data? At which level? I mean, we had these 4 levels, but where would you like to actually capture data?
At the health center?
At health center level. Is that it?
Yes. Or facility level.
Right, facility level. So could you please explain why you prefer collecting data as facility level, at facility level as opposed to maybe at region or district level?
Yeah, because at the end of the day or at the end of the month, this data has to be aggregated to perhaps to the district level and then finally to the country level.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thing is now to expand on his answer further, supposing, I mean, I will mention you a different scenario. Supposing we collect data at district level, okay? That's the level that we are collecting data. Then when we collect at district level, we can of course aggregate that data to the regional level and then to the country level. But what is the disadvantage of the step I mentioned now, collecting data at district level as opposed to collecting at facility level? What are we actually missing there?
So during analysis, you cannot do compare the data by facility because it already aggregated at district level.
Exactly. So that is that is a crucial thing that you have to remember, because I assume that all of you must be functioning at national level as advisors to various programs and information system implementations. So the basic concept is, I mean, when you capture data at some point, right, that's all what you have. So the thing is, if you just capture data at district level, and then you just have to forget about facility level, right? Because the thing is, you cannot drill down any further because the data is already there. So when you are implementing information system, it is quite crucial to understand and identify. You have to look far ahead, maybe a couple of decades into the future, and decide at national policy level what would be the granularity of data that we are expecting our health system requires in the next few years, right? And then you have to balance it, weigh it with the resources that you have, and the cost for implementation going one step down. Because the thing is, you have, I mean, like, one reason most of the countries in their initial steps tend to implement information system. Okay, I will ask from you all. So there are some instances where we actually capture data at district level. So what may be the reason for a country to actually capture data at district or maybe at a higher level? What may be the situation? So there may be more than one. So if you can mention one or two. where countries may opt not to collect data at facility, but they may opt to collect data maybe at a higher level. What are the examples? Hope my question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Shakti, yes.
When kind of sensitive data is collected, they might go for a higher level rather than a lower level. And when there are no facilities to capture data, like technical facilities and hardware issues, then they can go for a higher level.
Okay. Yeah, I will take those answers.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any more? Anyone else want to contribute? Or it's just that?
Hello, good morning.
Right. Yes.
Hello. Yeah, maybe sometimes when they do health programs like campaigns, like immunization campaigns that done at national level.
All right. So in immunization campaign, what type of data would be collected at national level? Okay. Anyone else want to contribute? Right. So we have two answers. I mean, like we have one answer. Ashan, you want to?
Yes, I think in national level, sometimes we need to give these national rates and those type of values, those figures. Sometimes we need to add into the system.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the answer what I was waiting. So Ashan, can you give some examples of that? I mean, what kind of data you collect that maybe I mean higher level than facility? For example, few of the data.
Population data, for example.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes. That was the answer I was waiting. So yes, now I mean, we have two solid reasons. So the first one, I will start with Shakira's answer. So sometimes, like if you are a low and middle income country and you get this grant to develop and implement information system, right? One thing that you have to keep in mind, if you look at these facilities, okay, let me ask this. So usually how organizations units will be there at level 1 of org unit hierarchy? Level 1, how many you have usually? How many org units?
One, generally.
One.
Yes, generally 1, right? It's a country level. And at level 2, you may have definitely more than that, but usually at provincial level, I mean, this is like highly subjective based on country context, but maybe less than 20, right? Usually, I mean, there may be exceptions, but I'm just saying. So what about the level 3? Will it be more than level 2 or it will be less organization units compared to level 2 at level 3? It will be
More than level 2.
more than level 2 usually, yes. And when you go to the level 4, which is health facility, then obviously it is going to be more than level 3. So what happens with this information system implementation is that we have limited resources, right? So we may be really ambitious, but when you are going to implement, you will realize that you cannot actually spend so much of resources to do a training program in all these facilities, right? So you may feel okay initially, maybe at the first phase, stop at district level. We won't go to the health facility. So yeah, so that may be one reason why this is happening. Okay, right. And then the second one is like the same thing Ashan was mentioning. So sometimes there are some data that you cannot usually collect at facility level, because sometimes this data is coming not from health ministry, but maybe from statistics department, and we may not have that particular data available at facility level. So for example, a classic example is population data. So population data I mean, usually in almost all the countries, you don't have at health facility level, but you may have maybe at, I mean, of course you have at national level, but maybe at provincial or district level, you may have that data. So these are two reasons why sometimes we are not collecting all data at facility level. Hope everything is clear up to this point. Okay. Right. So Let us talk about the second dimension, which is when dimension. So can someone tell me like what I mean in this context, in this example, what is representing when dimension?
It is November 2018.
It is November 2018, right? Okay. So the thing is in DHIS2, right? This dimension, the period dimension, we have a wide range of different dimensions available. So for example, we can sometimes collect these data sets in monthly, which is usually the case, but sometimes we may collect this data on annual or quarterly basis, right? So for example, what would be I mean, like in which program you usually collect quarterly data when it comes to control programs usually?
TB.
Yes, exactly. So TB data is usually collected on quarterly basis, as opposed to this MCH data, which is which is usually coming in monthly basis. So I think my colleague Priyanka will explain further when he's doing the indicators as to like the different periodicity of data items and how it becomes a concern when configuring indicators. So I'm not going to touch upon that. But the thing is, you have to remember that even in a single program, right? Even in say MCH program, there may be some data items which are coming on a monthly basis, and some data items, maybe some which are formulating the denominator, which is coming maybe on annual basis, right? So because this becomes a concern when you are going to configure an indicator, and we have to take it as a challenge and we have to address it properly, right? Okay. And the final one, which is very easy, is about what dimension. So in this case, I mean, how do you see the what dimension? What is represented here as a what dimension? And of course, you can see there are two arrows. So these two are same or different. So what's the difference?
So they are different because the first one has no disaggregations, and the second,
Okay.
which is sex, has disaggregations.
Yeah. So what are the disaggregations in the section on sex? We have
Male and female.
female. All right. Okay. Yeah. That's something really interesting. So the thing is, now as you can see here, so for example, ANC clients newly tested HIV positive and started on ART. So this one, we just collect one value. But here you can see HIV test performed, we are collecting, even though it is one, I mean, it is just a single row. In this row, we have two columns. We have a disaggregation, as he mentioned, right? So what we mean by disaggregation is sometimes when we are collecting a single data item. So for example, HIV test performed, that's what we are interested in. And this we would try to disaggregate so that this entire HIV test performed may be may be constituted by few options. So for example, here the total HIV test performs equals to the test performs on male plus female. So these two options, we call them category options. So basically this is a disaggregation, right? So what you have to remember is sometimes there are some data items or data elements in DHIS2 which are disaggregated further, and based on this disaggregation, the data is collected. Okay. One thing you have to keep in mind is this disaggregation should happen at the point where you collect it. Okay, why I say so is, so for example, now here, let's focus our attention here, right? So we are collecting the data, ANC clients that are HIV positive and on ART. Okay, so my question, now when we are going to analyze data for this one, ANC clients that are positive and on ART, my question is, are we able to design a pivot table which shows the ANC clients that are positive and on ART with two columns like male and female? Would it be possible at point of data analysis? Now here what you're seeing is data entry. So at point of data analysis for this particular data element, I'm asking whether are we able to have two columns displayed as male and female or not? What do you think?
No, it's not possible since we have not collected it in such a way.
Exactly. So the thing is, when you are collecting data, you have to collect you have to think about all the disaggregation at that point, and you have to collect data, right? Don't expect wonders from this system, right? I mean, this is also just another information system which has been formulated in a logical manner. So if you don't collect data with disaggregation at point of collecting data, don't expect the system to disaggregate for you when you analyze it, right? So make sure, I mean, this is the most important part, right? So please remember this when you are configuring your information system, because sometimes we take it for granted. Like, I mean, sometimes when you are starting the DHIS2 customization, we may think that, okay, right, I mean, this is easy. We just have to create some data elements and we just have to put them into data sets and display, right? And so we will start off with that, and we will train end users on how to collect data. And maybe in like 6 months, we can start creating the analytic modules, maybe some tables so that they can generate dashboards. And we will be moving on to that a bit later. So that this may be the general perception of some of the people who start customizing DHIS2 initially. But that, I must say, is a complete wrong way of looking at customization. Please remember, when you are customizing DHIS2, always think what are the analytic outputs that you need to produce, right? You start off with analysis. So when you are meeting your stakeholders, please talk to them and ask, okay, now what are the outputs that you require, right? Don't ask them, please give me your data entry sheet. Yeah, of course, you need the data entry sheet, the paper form that they are currently using, but you also will have to ask, please also let me know what are the tabular or chart type outputs or analysis that you want to, that you are expecting to perform by having this system. Please ask it at the inception and not after configuring the system. Is that clear? That is something really important. And when we usually see that some systems are not serving the expected functionality, it is because of this. Hope it's clear. All right. So let's again look at the data elements and categories in much detail. So you can see here in this particular slide that you have, of course, the data entry screen of DHIS2. And here you can see this Crow Health Facility is collecting data, right, for the period of June 2018. And like as I mentioned before, there are some, in this section, you can see there are some data elements which are not disaggregated, which are just collecting one value, right? So here, and then in this section, all the data elements, these are just data elements, these are collected, these are disaggregated into gender, male and female, and you are collecting them separately when at the point of data collection. Okay, right. So the slide also mentions the same thing that I have mentioned in the previous slide. You have to be mindful about disaggregation at the point of collection of data and not afterwards. Okay, right. Let's move on to the next slide, which of course is about the who data dimension. Okay, so here what do we see now? I mean, what is different in this slide compared to the slide that we saw previously on this one? So please have a look at this one. Okay, now I think you can get an idea what is here and what's different about the slide that you are seeing here. What's the difference? Anybody?
Including the implementing partner and the project.
And the project, both of them. Having the implementing partner and the project, right? So what actually happens here? Let me explain. Okay. Now, supposing we totally forget about implementing partner and project roles, this may be just another standard DHIS2 dataset, right? So we have this health sector response, I mean, like the emergency response dataset, right? This is actually ART monthly summary dataset, which we are collecting for this Gelahun CHC for the month May 2018. Okay, but what we are actually doing by adding this implementing partner and project is that this data set, the plain data set that we mentioned here, we are replicating it to maybe like 20 of them. So we may be having this one data set that we are usually collecting, but what we try to convert is that one data set will be converted into like 20. And these 20 data sets or 20 forms are entered based on the implementing partner and project. So what happens is, now there may, I mean, in a real life scenario, we may have around 5 implementing partners. So example, UNICEF, UNDP, likewise, right? And for each of this implementing partner, they may be having different projects. So in fact, the total number of data set we finally require is kind of like a multiplication of number of implementing partners and the projects. So for example, if we have 2 implementing partners and each implementing partner has 3 projects from which funding is coming from, for each of these data forms, we actually need 2 into 3, 6 data sets or 6 data forms to be completed at individual facility level. Is that clear? So in a simpler setting, we may just collect this one data set or one data form, ART monthly summary for a health facility. But like if our requirement is like it's not enough, we want to know this data set by implementing partner and project, because the data set is different, because like the data that is entered here may change for UNICEF, and what you are seeing for UNDP may be something totally different. So likewise, what we are doing is like, I mean, rather than creating 6 separate data set, by using this new, we call it a dimension, what we are doing is replicating the existing ART monthly summary. Okay, so here what you are seeing, for example, you are seeing the project and the partner, right? This could also be like, now, for example, if you want to have a data set where like you want to mention the targets, I mean, okay, we are hoping that we want to collect this much of data, but the actual result. So the same data set, you want to see targets and results. So even for this one, we can use this, this new dimension, which is of course the who dimension, right? How we configure it by using attributes as disaggregations for the data set. Is that clear, or should I need to explain further? If anybody is not clear about the who dimension, because this is something new, and if you don't have this scenario in your country, you may find it a bit difficult to understand. Anybody having any queries, please ask. So it will be helpful for others as well. Are you all clear about this who dimension concept?
Yeah, is it the same data set that we are going to use, or we have to develop separate data sets for each implementing partner?
Yes, good question. So why we are using this functionality of having this, you call this category combinations, okay? Category combinations, we can actually add to, so let me just explain this fact first. So this is achieved by using category combinations, okay? So category combinations, if we apply at level of data elements, then this is what you see, okay? So here the category combination of gender has been applied to the HIV test performed data element. Okay, so when we apply this category combination for the data element, we are replicating the data element as male and female. Okay, and this happens at form level for an individual data item that we are collecting. But what happens if we apply a new category combination to the data set level is what you are seeing here. So ideally, what we are actually doing is, just like in the data element, we are just making a single data set, not more than that, just one data set, and we are applying the category combination to that data set. And at data entry level, using this drop down menu, whenever we select one of them, you will be able to see that it's actually a total new data set which is actually loading. So the advantage is, rather than creating so many data sets for different implementing partner and project combinations, we just create a single data set, and at data entry level, the data entry people will be seeing different forms and you can enter different values. I can explain this further when I'm doing the actual demonstration I mean, I can show you example and demo. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's clear now.
Any more questions on this?
Yeah, Dr. Pramod, if it is sort of a different data set, why can't we, we have to really stick to this method? Why can't we make a separate data set rather than going for this method? What is the difference in between separate data set making and as well as this method?
Right. There are so many reasons. Like now, the thing is now, for example, because I mentioned so many factors are there. Is like one is if you are thinking of making a separate data set, if the number of data sets that you have to make is limited. Say, for example, this company, I mean, like you want only for 3 more data sets, right? So it may make sense to have just 3 separate data set created then and there. But this way, it is more scalable, right? Say, for example, here, if we have like, because we may today start off with like 3 or 4 implementers, right? Who currently have around 4 projects. But like, if this keeps on expanding, you will have to go on creating data sets, maybe like 20, 30 of them, which is not that scalable in the long run, right? But like if you do this, do it this way, then it automatically generates new data sets, and you don't have to, like even the data in for the data entry users perspective, if you keep on creating new data sets, it may be a bit cumbersome, because like they may be trained in a different way. Like they may be trained to see that you have only 3 data sets, right? And then every day we may keep on adding data sets. And also, when we add additional data sets, there are some other things that come, like you have to, with some configuration concerns, like you have to set separate sharing settings, right? So there's a lot of configuration work that is involved. And when you look at it from analytics perspective also, this scales really well when you want to analyze data. So when you are using the analytic tools, this additional dimension comes nicely, so that you can, I mean, from just opening just one data set, just pulling out data elements from one data set, you can get the necessary visualization, right? Rather than just trying to have different data sets created with different data elements and all. So this is kind of a more scalable way in an overall setup. That's one. All right. So if there are no more questions, I guess now it's 11:07 here in Sri Lanka. So next I'm actually moving on to do the demonstration of the content I have covered. So before that, I think we can take a small break of how many minutes, Priyanka? 5 minutes. So let me quickly summarize what we did in last 1 hour. So the session was about, the session of course will be continued even after my demonstration. So the entire session for the day is about how the metadata configuration in DHIS2 is affecting analysis. So we are doing a quick recap about metadata configuration in DHIS2. So in my session, I briefly mentioned, right, what are the building blocks of DHIS2, and out of the building blocks, I mentioned mainly the what and when dimensions, how they are organized in DHIS2, and also briefly about where dimension and what are the organization units and what are the levels that are available. And also I explained to you how data sets are configured and assigned at different levels. And there were other few key concerns that I mentioned, that you have to collect data at the lowest level as much as possible. And also, like if you want some data items to be disaggregated when you are producing analytic outputs, you have to capture that disaggregation at the point of data capture. Okay, right. So then finally, I mentioned also about the who dimension and how it becomes a scalable solution when you want to replicate the same data set over implement. For example, in the situation of you have multiple implementing partners who are implementing different projects. All right. So with this, let us try to move to the demonstration. Let me share my screen. All right, I assume you can see my screen. So I'm moving to academy.demos.dhis2/metadata, right? So this particular DHIS2 instance is having the metadata and also the data of the play demo, the DHIS2 play demo, which is of Sierra Leone, right? So this is the Sierra Leone, this is kind of replication of the Sierra Leone play demo instance. Okay, so let me enter my username, the password is district, and I enter. All right. Okay. So when I enter, I will usually land in the dashboard, and I'm not going to describe what you see here because we had an extensive session on dashboards yesterday, right? So let us actually try and open the data entry module so that we'll be able to recap the concepts that were highlighted in the presentation. So I'm clicking on apps icon and going to data entry. Okay. All right. So here on the left side of the screen, I'm seeing the organization unit tree. So let us appreciate and analyze what is there in this particular country. So we have the level 1 of the organization unit tree, which is of course the national level, the country level. And then here we have the provinces, right? We see like 3, 4, 6, 9, 12, and 13. So you can see like one organization unit at the level 1, and then you have 13 in level 2. Let me just open this Bombali, and here we are seeing the third level, right? And let me just further go down, click here, and you'll be able to see all the health facilities, right? So in this particular country, we can explain that it has 4-level organization unit hierarchy, right? And the facilities are placed at the 4th level. So let me just select one of the health facilities, which is Bamban MCHP. I do that, right? And once I do that, you can see the organization unit appearing here. And then I can click on this drop-down list, which are actually the data sets that have been assigned to these health facilities, right? So, I mean, there's a huge list of data sets that you are seeing here, right? Let me select PMTCT monthly summary, which is from HIV program. And then once I do that, the next is I have to select the period, right? So the period for this data set is, as you can see here, which is what? Monthly, right? So let me select July 2020. And when I do that, of course, you are seeing this data set, right? So let us analyze what we have in this data set. So in this data set, we have 3 tabs for ANC, maternity and postnatal, right? And you are actually seeing a lot of data elements, right? It's not a very short form, but it's not too large either, right? You have some data elements here. And most importantly, what you are seeing here, what do you call this one? This is the disaggregation, right? That I was talking before, right? So here, now just see what we are doing. We have this particular PMTCT monthly summary data set, which we are collecting at the lowest level in the organization unit hierarchy. And we have a set of data elements, each of which have the category combinations or the category disaggregations attached. So the interesting thing is, for all these data elements, we can, enter the data based on this age categories, right? And this age category is applied to the data element level and not at the level of data set. So here we are not seeing that who dimension you saw in the presentation, like the project and implementing partner. So because of that, this disaggregation is not applied to the data set, but the disaggregation has been applied to the data elements. Okay. And once we enter data here, right, this data will be aggregated along this organization unit hierarchy. So how the aggregation happens is all these facilities will aggregate to the level 3, and all these health facilities in level 3 will aggregate to this level 2, and all the facilities in this level 2 hierarchy will aggregate to the level 1, which is the country. Right. I hope I am clear up to this point. Okay. Right. Now, let us try to see. Now, here, of course, we are entering, we have selected organization unit in level 4. If you can remember, during my presentation, I asked from you the question, is it a fact that always data should be entered at level 4? Let's see whether in this country they are collecting all the data at level 4, or even at other levels there are some data sets that are correct. Okay, so let me try to click on this level 3, Biriva, right? I'm going to click on Biriva, and let's see whether there are any data sets which are available at this level 3. Of course, there are some data. Can you see? We have facility assessment and staffing. So this is what you are actually seeing in a usual country setting. So in level 4, we had a huge list of data set, right? Can you see? So there are at least about 10 to 20 data sets which are available at level 4, which is the facility level. But here in level 3, we are only seeing 2 of them, because there are some data collection requirements which needs it to be collected at district level, and those are not many. So for example, here the facility assessment and staffing related information are the only data sets that are collected at district level. So let me select the staffing, right? And let me select what happens here. All right. Can you see something interesting? So in level 4, I mean, this is something very generic. Now, the data set that we collected, right? I mean, it tends to be the periodicity, the frequency of data collection tends to be more frequent. So we usually have this monthly data set. But here, can you see? In level 3, this particular data set, here it's January to June 2020. So it's a biannual data set. So here the periodicity is different. So what you have to appreciate is that the data sets can be of any period, right? So why it becomes a concern when you are analyzing data is that you have to have some background idea about, the frequency of data collection. So why it becomes important is that, so supposing, now let me just select this data item. Let me select the period, okay? And then let's have a look at this, the data element. So we have the community health assistants, number of community health assistants on salary and not on salary. Let me ask a question, okay? So supposing we try to develop a pivot table, right? Which outputs data and okay, now what I want to output by using a pivot table is to get the output of number of doctors who are on salary for the month of April 2020. I repeat, I want to get the output as a pivot table of number of doctors who are available in Biriva district for April 2020. Do any of you have any concerns about the analytic output that I'm going to produce? Any comments, anyone?
You can't do that because the data was entered on a biannual basis, not on monthly basis.
Yeah, so sorry, you are saying, is it possible to get this output or it is not possible?
No, it's not possible.
Exactly. Is that clear to everyone? Now, this is how the DHIS2 design and analytics are combined, right? So if you don't have any idea about the design and how the data is collected, you just can't blindly go and analyze. Like if you try to do a live demo and if the data is not coming, you will be, like humiliated even if you do not know the workflow of information. So what I was saying was, like here, as he correctly mentioned, that this data that we are collecting at point of generation is on a biannual basis, right? So we are only collecting data to January to June. But like if you just try to take data on a monthly basis, like if you want to see for each month in 2020 and you are expecting some kind of variation, it is not possible because you are actually generating data at a much higher frequency. But if you want to get annual data for 2020 or 2019, this is possible, and you will nicely see the variation for each district. Can you see? So each of these building blocks in DHIS2 has some relevance when you are trying to produce some analytic output. So this is how the period dimension is concerned when you are producing analytic outputs. Is that clear? All right. So let us move one step further and see what we have. So we are here, and now let me just move to health facility here. I'm selecting this second health facility, and let us see again what are the data sets that are available. All right, okay. Interestingly, we have the population data set also. Let me open it up and see the periodicity. Okay, make a guess. What would you think it will be the periodicity for this data set? Monthly, quarterly, biannual, annual? What do you think?
Should be annual.
Let's see whether you're correct. Exactly, you are correct. It's an annual data set. Why? Because that's how things work in reality. Like this population's data, we usually collect it on annual basis. We are not collecting it on a monthly basis, right? So here you can see at facility level, for each year, we are having this annual data set and we are collecting this information, right? Okay. So now you can see that we have different data sets which are based on different periodicity when we are configuring them. Okay. Right. So let me now move on to the next part I covered in the presentation, which is about the category combinations, right? So let me open up a data set, which may be, let me see what are the ones available. So for the same organization unit, okay, let's go to this reproductive health data set. I select the reproductive health data set, and the period type I will just select, maybe June 2020, right? Okay, so what do you see here? If you appreciate what you're seeing in this data set, you can see under this antenatal care section, here we have few data elements which have been disaggregated as fixed and outreach. Right, so this is a data element level disaggregation. So data element level category combinations have been assigned. So when you are entering data, in fact, you are collecting two items for the same data element. So the final value for this data element will be constituted by a cumulative aggregation of these two options. So here you are seeing for the ANC first visit, we are collecting fixed level and the outreach level. Okay, so that is the same for all the data elements that you see here. And if you move down, right, in this delivery section, we have again a set of data elements, but these are not actually been disaggregated. So these are just collecting data. They just collect a whole value for the entire data element without having any kind of disaggregation, such as fixed or outreach or male female. Likewise, we don't have that kind of disaggregation for the data elements which are present in this section, in delivery section. So you can see even inside one data set, we can configure the data elements in such a way that you can have the data elements without disaggregation and with disaggregations, because these work at data element level and not at data set level. So due to this, we can have just one data set with data element disaggregated and data elements which are not disaggregated. So let me also show you how this becomes a concern when you are in fact trying to analyze data. Okay, so let me open up the pivot table here. Okay, I'm going to pivot table, and then I will move to data elements, right? And I have to select data element group. Okay, and let me see the data element group, reproductive health, right? So once I do that, just notice what happens. Okay, so onto your left side, you are seeing all these data elements which were there in this previous data set, which was on reproductive health. But can you also note that, so for example, if you can remember this low birth weight in PHU and low birth weight in community, these were the data elements in the previous data entry screen I showed, which did not have any disaggregation. But here we have few of them such as ANC first visit, second visit, third visit, fourth visit, which were in fact disaggregated. But in this screen, we are just seeing the name of the data element. So is it because that the disaggregation cannot be visualized in pivot table, or do we have to do something else to see this disaggregation here? If so, what we have to do? So what we can do is, now you can see here, it is currently total. Okay, let me show what happens when you go to details. So I select details, and can you see what happened to that ANC? Okay, now let me just shift back to totals. Here we only have ANC first visit, and when I shift to details, you can see ANC first visit fixed and outreach. So when you go to this detail option, you can in fact select that granularity, that disaggregated data, the data which was collected in a disaggregated form. You can select it when you move into this details tab. So is that clear? So why we collect data in the data entry form in a disaggregated fashion is because when we are analyzing data, we actually can select that granularity and produce a table which has that disaggregation. But let me just move, scroll down so that I can see maybe so there were ones, okay, such as low birth weight in PHU and community. These are not disaggregated as male or female or as fixed and outreach. Why is that? Because at the point of collection of data and the way we have customized, configured the metadata is such that we have not had them disaggregated. So is that, I mean, like you can't be configuring your DHIS2 instance and after 6 months you try to analyze data and ask, okay, why do I not see fixed and outreach or disaggregated as male and female is low birth weight in PHU? You can't ask that question at this point, right? So you have to, you should have thought about it when you are configuring the data set and when you are configuring the DHIS2 instance. So this has been considered at that point. Is that clear? All right. So, right now, here I described about the categories and category combinations and apply them to the data elements. So let me now see how it can be applied to data sets. So I'm going back to the data entry module here, and I click on, let me select which one. Let's see whether we have some data. Okay, we can go to this emergency response, right? And I select maybe July 2020, right? And what do we see here? Now here we are seeing, right, for this particular org unit, for the emergency response data set, for the period July 2020, there is another additional dimension we have to select. This is in fact that who dimension. So it is asking whether I'm going to select the target dataset or the result dataset. So for example, if I select the target, you will see, right, a separate dataset which is appearing, which actually define the targets of these data elements for the month of July 2020, right? Let me also show you what happens when I open the results. And please note what are the changes that take place, right? Results. Do you see the difference? It's the same data set. So the data elements which are there in the target data set as well as result data set is it's the same, right? It's just that you can enter a totally different set of values. Can you see? Now in this result data set for the emergency response for July 2020, these are the values that are entered. Now if I shift back to target, you will see the values are different. So for example, children trained on key survival skills, the target has been set as 63. But when you shift back to results, actually the result has been much less, which is 13. So can you see the advantage of having these? So it's the same data set you can nicely replicate without actually creating duplicate data sets or data elements. So this is where we are using this the category combinations and applying it at the level of data set. Is the data entry form clear? I hope so. Okay. If that is clear, let me move back to pivot table and see what happens. So this is, I mean, because we to save time, I have designed the pivot table by myself beforehand. So what I have done is, right, the same data elements, right? I have just selected target and results. So by having data collected in two different data sets by using this who dimension, you can in fact finally develop a single table, single pivot table with these targets and result values appearing next to each other. So with this, you can do a nice comparison and produce a report with targets and results, right? So the advantage is you just had only one data set, but like the analytic, when it comes to analysis, you can just disaggregate the data, I mean, at data element level based on this criteria that you have set. So in this example, all the data elements have been disaggregated into target and results. Mind you, it's all data elements, not just one or two. Is that clear? So if that is clear, I think...
Dr. Pamod, may I ask one question? Regarding that we can data disaggregate by categorization, we can add to the same data element as a target and result, same form.
Yes, same form.
Yeah. What is the advantages of this method then? That categorical level when we disaggregate the data element.
So I assume your question is, what is the advantage of disaggregating at data element level versus disaggregation at data set level?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I explained a little while ago, it's because like if you apply it at data set level, whatever the data elements that that are there in that data set, the disaggregation applies, right? So here you can see for all these data elements, it will be like that. But like if you just want few of the data elements in that one to be categorized, not all of them, then you have to apply it at data element level. Because as you can remember in that reproductive health data set, you had in single data set only few data elements disaggregated into fixed and outreach. Whereas some of the data elements, they were just plain data elements without disaggregation. So if that is the case, in one data set you have both of them, you have to apply it at data element level and not at data.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any more questions? Don't worry, the entire metadata part we have not completed because the org unit groups and sharing and few other elements are still pending, and Priyanka will do that. So are there any questions up to this point?
Yeah, regarding disaggregation, generally we call like when we disaggregate the data element and add the values or whatever in the disaggregated data, we get the total. Whereas in the target versus results, we cannot add those. It's not it's not part of a whole, no, the target versus results when we try to disaggregate at the data set level.
Yeah, okay. Now is now I just took this generic example. So always keep in mind, right? Yeah. So now I'm not going into too much information about the configuration part of DHIS2 because it's kind of out of the scope. Yes. So when you are configuring the categories and category combination, we mentioned that it has to make some sense. Like when you categorize, you have to make sure that all the category options constitute to the total. Yeah. But here it is a different purpose. Here, of course, what we do is to incorporate this who dimension so that we prevent the requirement of making multiple data sets for the I would say the convenience of the scalability, right? We are doing this, so it doesn't really make that much of sense as you mentioned So because these are two different concepts, so applying it at the category combinations and categorization as data level, data element level and data set level are two different concepts. So yes, you are correct. So because now here we are just taking target and results. So adding target and results doesn't make any total. So that is because these are two different concepts.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So if there are no more questions, we don't stop it there because we have an exercise also for this session. But what we will do is we will first let Priyank finish the remaining metadata configuration part, and then we will move on to the exercise. So this exercise will not be a graded exercise, but that exercise will have to be completed in a group setting, and you can discuss and do it. So if there are no queries on this one, I think we can move on to the next session.